Welcome, y'all. It's Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the acreages that are needed to plant the food plots that we really want to plant on our deer hunting farm. These are going to vary significantly depending upon what you plant. Something like a corn, a soybean, a sunflower is obviously going to need more acreages than something like a clover, an alfalfa, something that's much more browse tolerant. But today we're going to go over what size, in my opinion, the most ideal plot for you to have on your deer hunting farm. My name is Wes. I run the channel DIY Food Plot Pro. I've got a Bachelor of Science in Agronomy. I farm for a living, and I've got an 1,800 acre whitetail deer hunting outfitter in Western Kentucky where we cannot bait. So we rely heavily on these food plots that I produce on this channel to hold and harvest the mature bucks that we're blessed to hunt here in Western Kentucky. When I'm doing a lot of the consultations and I'm traveling around and helping folks set their farms up in the winter time, this often comes up. What size food plot is the most ideal size? Because many folks start with a blank canvas, right? We buy a farm, we might get it logged, and then we have a little timber money left around. I want to plant some food plots in here as well. And so what size should these plots be, and what should I plant in these plots? As a general rule, the plots of clover, perennial clover, annual clovers, alfalfas, cereal grains are much more browse tolerant. At that point, you can use a much smaller plot. In those cases, I like between 1/4 of an acre and 1/2 of an acre. Those are, in my opinion, the very best plot sizes for those type of plots. That we are looking at more of a kill type plot, not looking at a large destination plot. We're looking at smaller and more secluded areas where we can still get a little bit of sunlight in there, because that's a main thing. No plots are going to do real well in the woods. We have to have that sunlight, but yet it still feels small. It still feels very secluded. There's a lot of security for a whitetail there. It's a good place to catch a whitetail going through on the way out to your large destination plots. I don't plant a ton of perennial clovers and things like that on the channel. And the main reason that I do not is I typically focus on the large destination plots. And I feel like I can get just as much of a punch out of my summer food plot program not using clover. My summer food plot program contains soybeans and sunflowers, which in my opinion are just as good or better than clover is. So I'm already having those two in my plots, and then I'm also going to add corn in my large destination plots. So what I'm trying to do on my farm is feed the whitetails the entire year. So I have my soybeans and my sunflowers that will get planted in April or May here. They will provide for those whitetails throughout the entire fall months, and I'll even make a little bit of seed for the winter time. And I'll also have corn in those large destination plots, and that corn will really start providing in the late fall and will continue through the next spring. Clover is not something that I plant an awful lot of, just because of the fact that I feel like I'm already filling that void with my soybeans and my sunflowers, something that is a little easier for me to raise, and I don't have to be mowing or spraying all the time. For something like corn, soybeans, and sunflowers, and any other highly preferred food source, say lab is definitely in that group. How big a plot do we need for those large destination food plots? And a lot of that is going to be determined by your deer density. I hate to kind of have the political answer there, but it really does depend whether on your 300 acre farm, whether you have 50 deer living on it or whether you have 20 deer living on it. There's a huge difference there in the amount of land that you need to produce those plots. It's also going to be determined as well as how much summer food is around on your farm, right? Because here I'm in ag country, and if I have, say, a 2 acre field, but I'm also surrounded by a lot of ag as well, not 100% ag, probably 40% of our landscape is ag, I'm going to be able to get by with less land than what, say, a person that has 1,000 acres and has a 2 acre field right in the middle of the 1,000 acres of woods with no ag around. It's going to vary depending upon what your summer food sources are in your area, and it's also going to depend on your deer numbers that are in your area. So we are in a high deer density area. We are well over 100 deer per square mile in my neck of the woods here. What I find to be ideal is about a 3 acre plot. A 3 acre plot to me is the most ideal and perfect size, because I can raise corn, I can raise soybeans, I can raise sunflowers on that plot and not have any trouble. Now, I do definitely want to back up and say that I have raised all 3 of those plots on smaller acreages, but there's some things that I have done in the past with scarecrows. There's some things that I've done in the past with increasing seeding rates. Many things have to be done to kind of prepare that field for success when you're trying to plant in a smaller field than, say, a 3-acre field. So in my opinion, a 3-acre field is going to be perfect because I can essentially split that half and half between my summer food source is my soybeans and my sunflowers, and my other half can be in corn. And I've got enough on both sides of that spectrum that I should be able to keep up with a pretty good sized deer herd, so long as I'm fertilizing and staying on top of the weeds and grasses and things like that, making sure that plant grows as fast as what it possibly can. One of the biggest keys in preventing over browsing is making sure those plants are growing as fast as you can get them to grow. They are being choked out by grass, and they're being choked out by weeds, or they have low soil pH, low P and K in the soil, the seed's not been inoculated. All these things work against you and get the plant growing slower and slower and slower, and that gives deer a chance to get ahead, right? So the more things that we can get on our side, the smaller of a plot that we can have and still be successful with it. But I like a 3-acre plot. It kind of has that feel of a smaller plot still generally, but it also produces a significant amount of food. I have seen plots that are significantly bigger than that. I have a couple of them myself. I've got one that's close to 5 acres. And the issue that I run into with the 5-acre plot is I generally have a little bit of food left over, which isn't a huge deal, but the problem that I get into is if I planted a Roundup Ready corn and they don't eat all my Roundup Ready corn, the following spring when I'm trying to kill that corn, Roundup won't kill it. It makes me kind of dive into other forms of chemistry that are a little bit more little less cost effective. It kind of makes managing that whole thing a little bit more difficult when we're using Roundup Ready corn or Roundup Ready soybeans and the deer don't eat all of them. The field that I'm standing in here actually has volunteer soybeans from last year. These are heavy traded soybeans that are resistant to Roundup, 2,4-D, and Liberty. And so when we came in for a burn down, the burn down was Roundup, 2,4-D, and Dual. These soybeans, they are resistant to Roundup, they're resistant to 2,4-D. After a full spraying, guess what I've still got out here? Soybeans. Which is not a huge deal, but that kind of paints a picture of what I'm talking about. We don't want a significant amount of food left over. That just takes some experience on your end of planting food plots in your area and seeing how much is left and cutting back and adding a little bit more. Ideally, you run out of food right at spring green up. That's the most ideal thing that could possibly happen. From a strictly wildlife perspective, I want to have at least some left over. It means I fed the deer to the maximum potential. But you get into that fighting these traded varieties, and it gets much more difficult to manage that field the following year when you have Roundup resistant corn or soybeans inside that field. That's one reason that I'm beginning to make a push towards non-Roundup Ready food plots, just to be able to get away from those traits and be able to come back in the following spring with a Roundup and kill everything like you used to could. I find a 3-acre field is perfect, and I don't like those really large fields. I did some consulting this winter and went to some properties that had legitimately 15 to 25 acre food plots. I would much rather have, we thought we needed 25 acres of food, which is a tremendous amount of food. If you are producing that food right, 25 acres of food is a very large amount of food. I would much rather have that spread out in 5 or 6, 7 different plots as I would have a 25 acre plot. One reason for that is when you're trying to hunt it, becomes much more difficult to hunt every wind direction, right? So if we have 6 or 7 different plots that are 3-4 acres apiece, then we can spread out and we can hunt south wind or east wind, north wind, west wind, whatever wind that we got, we've got a food plot set up for that. Where if you have one big plot, generally you're gonna have one wind that's perfect for you, maybe a second that's marginal, and the third and fourth are a no-go. The more food plots that we have on that farm, we can spread that out and hunt different winds. That's one thing that I'm always looking for when I'm setting these food plots up. Like this plot right here, for example, this sets up great for a west wind, but it's terrible for a north and a south wind. So I don't want to set up multiple plots on this farm that set up great for a west wind, right? We want to set up a plot that works really good for a north wind or works really good for a south wind. and an east wind. If we're being choosy and we're picking where we're putting these plots at, the more variability that we have on the wind, the higher likelihood of us killing mature deer. We have more chances to get out in the field and hunt and not burn a single stand out. If you need help setting up your food plots or your farms, I've got a website set up, www.diyfoodplotpro.com. You can go there. You can click on boots on the ground visit. I will schedule a time with you this winter. I'll get out to your property. We'll walk it and we'll develop a plan for the habitat for the food plots. We'll lay all the food plots out and I'll tell you exactly what I recommend plant. Also, we'll give you a full rundown of what I believe is the best stand locations and blind locations. Try to get that farm on the right track. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can go to www.diyfoodplotpro.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all smash that like and subscribe button.